The day my daughter was born, I watched my wife hold her like she meant it. Gentle, tender, all the right kinds of love, and I realized I didn't know who she was anymore. I remember the ceiling tiles first. Pale gray, all identical except one near the fluorescent light, stained in the corner like something had leaked through long ago, and no one had bothered to clean it. I kept staring at that spot, unable to look down. They were sewing my wife back up. My daughter had just been born. I heard her before I saw her, a shriek that didn't sound quite human at first. Then another cry, louder, urgent. I turned and there she was, tiny and screaming and alive. That noise undid something in me. I didn't cry, but I felt my chest hollow out and fill with something else at the same time, like every cell in my body had been rewired. She was perfect. Lena looked exhausted, her face pale beneath the harsh lighting, eyes barely open. She whispered, "Is she okay?" And I nodded, because I couldn't speak. I kissed her forehead. She smelled like blood and antiseptic and something soft I couldn't name. They let me hold her, finally. This fragile, squirming thing. My daughter. My hands were shaking. The nurse wrapped her tighter, smiling politely, asking questions I barely processed. Lena was being wheeled to recovery. I followed, my legs moving without thought. Everything was a blur of soft beeping machines and busy voices, nurses sliding past, the squeak of rubber soles on linoleum. I kept looking at the baby, not Lena. That part matters now. I kept looking at her, not Lena. In the room, while they settled Lena in and checked her vitals, I sat in the armchair with my daughter against my chest. She stopped crying. Her breath was shallow and quick, but steady. Her warmth soaked into me. I felt something shift then, like maybe all the pieces of my life were finally aligning. Lena was asleep, or pretending to be. Her phone was in her purse on the table. It buzzed. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. We weren't that couple. At least I didn't think we were. But something made me stand up. Maybe it was the frequency, 3 buzzes in under a minute. Or maybe it was just instinct, that whisper in the gut we always dismiss until it's too late. I took her phone and flipped it open. She never used a lock code. Not with me. The messages were from a number with no name attached. Just a gray bubble and a timestamp. The most recent one read, "I kept the reservation. You said you'd call once it was done. I'm still waiting." I stared at it, not understanding. The message before that, "Don't disappear. We had a plan." And then, "Tell me she's not keeping you." My mouth went dry. The weight of the baby in my arms felt suddenly unreal, like I was holding someone else's life. I locked the screen, slid the phone back exactly where it was, and sat down again. I didn't look at Lena. My daughter made a small sound, halfway between a sigh and a whimper, and I gently rocked her, trying to focus only on her. Not the words burning into my brain. "Tell me she's not keeping you." What did that mean? The room was quiet. Machines beeped softly, lights dimmed overhead. A nurse came in, checked Lena's vitals, smiled at me. "She's beautiful," she whispered. I nodded. "Do you want me to show you how to swallow her properly?" she asked. "No," I said, too quickly. Then added, "I'm okay, thanks." When she left, I looked over at Lena. Her breathing was even. She looked peaceful. Her face turned slightly away from me, lips parted, hair stuck to her temple. I stared at her like I didn't know her. I tried to remember the last time we'd made love. 6 weeks before the due date, maybe. She'd pulled away first. Said she was too tired, too swollen. I believed her. Who wouldn't? Pregnancy changes everything. It's supposed to. But this? I thought of the birthing class she skipped 2 months ago, said she was nauseous. The overnight trip to her sister's, the one who moved out of state 3 years ago. The time she came home from a massage and didn't want to be touched for the rest of the weekend. They'd all felt insignificant then. Moments you brush off because real betrayal isn't something you look for in the woman carrying your child. It's not supposed to be possible. And yet, I rocked my daughter. Watched the tiny movement of her mouth, the way she furrowed her brow in her sleep like she was dreaming already. I should have been thinking about names, about birth certificates. I should have been feeling wonder, love, awe. But all I felt was stillness, like I just stepped off a cliff and hadn't hit the ground yet. An hour later, Lena stirred. "Is she okay?" she asked, groggy. "She's perfect." "You've just been sitting there," she said, smiling faintly. "You're in shock." "Probably." She reached out her hand. "Come here." I stood and handed her the baby. She took her gently, carefully. She looked down at her like she really loved her. And maybe she did. I don't know. Love and betrayal aren't opposites. Sometimes they wear the same face. I watched them together, Lena humming a quiet, broken melody I didn't recognize. She looked like the woman I married, but I couldn't find the tether anymore. I kept thinking about the name missing from those messages, about the word plan, about the way she hadn't asked for her phone. I walked out of the room 20 minutes later under the pretense of calling my parents. I took the elevator down to the lobby, crossed the floor with its wax tiles and muted lighting, and stepped into the cold outside. I stood there in my jacket, watching cars roll by under the amber glow of street lamps. I took a breath. Then I opened my own phone. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 2 years, a friend I'd cut off when Lena said he made her uncomfortable. He picked up on the third ring. "Tom," I said, "I need a favor. I think Lena's been lying to me. I need to know who this number belongs to." A pause. Then, "You sure?" "No," I said, "but I think I will be." I didn't go back upstairs for almost an hour. The baby was barely 6 hours old, and I was already pacing outside the hospital like I was grieving something. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the messages could mean anything, but it felt like I was standing on the edge of something enormous and invisible, something that had already swallowed part of my life without me noticing. Tom texted 20 minutes after we spoke. "That number's registered to a Marcus Wells. Local. Works at a counseling center on Alder." Then, another one. "He's married." I didn't answer. The name didn't mean anything to me. Lena never mentioned a Marcus. Not once in 7 years. I went back upstairs. The room smelled like formula and latex. Lena was asleep again, arms wrapped loosely around the baby. Her face was soft, almost girlish in the way sleep softened the tension from her features. I stood at the foot of the bed, watching her, wanting to believe there was another explanation, that this Marcus person was a friend, a coworker, someone she confided in during the pregnancy. Maybe too much. But then there was that line. "You said you'd call once it was done." Done. Like this was a transaction. A deadline. A condition. I sat back down, pretended to scroll my phone. In truth, I started collecting things. Email addresses. Calendar invites. Her Apple ID was logged into our shared laptop at home. I'd helped her set it up. I knew the password. May 31st, our anniversary. She never changed it. That night, while she slept, I sat beside her and pretended to be somewhere else in my mind. My daughter, still unnamed, rested in a hospital bassinet. The softest thing in the room. The most real. The next morning, I volunteered to go home and get Lena some fresh clothes. She handed me her keys like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like she hadn't been carrying a stranger's voice in her pocket. Our house looked different in the daylight. Too neat. Every frame aligned, every cushion in place. No signs of deceit. But that was the trick of it, wasn't it? Lies don't leave stains. They live in silences. In the things that don't move. In her home office drawer, the one she always kept locked, I found the key taped under her desk. Inside were receipts. Small ones at first. A coffee place she never mentioned. Gas station charges in towns she said she never visited. A hotel on a weekday in April, during a work retreat. The receipt was folded around a typed itinerary. The guest listed beside her room, Marcus Wells. I stared at the name, flat and inescapable now. It wasn't emotional. Not yet. It felt like reading a test result that confirmed what you already knew but hoped wasn't true. I looked at the date again. April 16th. 5 months before the due date. The week after she told me she wanted to clear her head before the 3rd trimester. I sat on the floor of our hallway with the receipt in my lap, and the house perfectly quiet around me. I should have cried, maybe, or gotten angry, but I didn't feel anything. Not yet. Just a kind of dull echo. I brought her the clothes, held the baby, kissed her forehead. I didn't say a word. Over the next week, while we adjusted to the chaos of newborn life, I slipped into a routine that looked like love. Diapers, bottles, 3 a.m. feedings. Lena seemed grateful. Tired, but grateful. She started calling our daughter Eva. Just said it one day like it had always been her name. I nodded, because it fit. I started sleeping on the couch under the excuse of giving Lena more space to recover. She didn't argue. I watched her like a stranger in my own house, cataloging the rhythm of her movements. The calls she stepped away to take. The night she lingered in the shower too long. I wasn't looking for more evidence. I was looking for patterns. I found them. Emails to Marcus, hidden in a folder labeled Wellness. A fake email account, lena.whitmore86@gmail.com, connected to her home Wi-Fi. She'd used it to send files, travel plans, documents, and photos. The first was innocuous. A shot of a beach. Then came one of her smiling in sunglasses I didn't recognize, her hair windblown, dress loose over her pregnant belly. Marcus was just outside the frame, but his reflection was in her glasses. She'd sent it with the subject line, "Wish you were here." No one writes that to a therapist. I stopped sleeping. I stopped talking unless spoken to. Every moment with Eva felt like being suspended between two lives. The one I thought I had, and the one I was waking up in. I started recording everything. Screenshots, PDFs, notes. I didn't know what for, not yet, but I knew I couldn't unsee any of it. 10 days after Eva was born, Lena asked me if I was okay. We were standing in the kitchen. She was holding a coffee cup with both hands, her face pale from exhaustion. "You've been quiet," she said. "I'm tired." "Me too," she said softly. Then, "But I'm really glad you're here. With us." I wanted to ask who else she'd imagined standing in my place. Instead, I nodded and kissed her cheek. That night, I called Tom again. "You were right," I told him. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." But that wasn't true. I was already beginning to shape it. Whatever came next, I'd take my time. Move quietly. Let her believe she was safe. It was how she moved, after all. She taught me. There's a kind of silence you only hear in a place someone meant to return to. The door creaked like it hadn't opened in weeks, but the air inside told a different story. Not stale, not abandoned. Just paused. Like someone had stepped out to buy coffee and never came back. The apartment was on the edge of the city, tucked above a Pilates studio with frosted windows and a sandwich board that read, "Reset your core, reset your life." Fitting. I found the address in Lena's Uber history, buried under a fake name and paid in cash. She'd labeled it client drop-off, and it came up more times than I wanted to count. Inside, everything felt intentional. Clean, sparse. A single couch, navy blue, facing a mounted TV that still had the plastic film on the remote. An empty wine bottle in the sink. Her brand, dark glass, French label. A throw blanket folded too neatly to have been used often. Art on the walls. Black and white photography, coastal cliffs, waves crashing on jagged rock. I'd never seen any of it before. She hated the ocean. Said it made her feel small. The first drawer I opened had a toothbrush and 2 deodorants, his and hers. Cologne. Razor cartridges. A nail clipper. No dust. The bedroom was worse. A framed photo sat on the dresser. Not of them together. That would have been too reckless. Just Lena, pregnant, half turned toward the mirror, her hand on her stomach. The frame was brass, smudged near the bottom corner, like it had been handled often. There was a second toothbrush on the counter, identical to the one in the drawer. A set of folded men's clothes on a chair. A bottle of aftershave that smelled nothing like me. But what stopped me wasn't the photo. It was the sound. A phone, buzzing softly beneath a throw pillow. I froze. No footsteps. No keys in the door. No voices. I waited another full minute before crossing the room. Her name was on the screen. Lena Mobile. The contact name was saved as L. That was all. The message preview read, "Need to see you." It's not what I thought. Please. I stared at it long enough for the screen to go dark again. I didn't touch anything else. I didn't need to. She hadn't just been cheating. She'd been living. Parallel to me. Parallel to Eva. Creating something new with someone else before ours had even finished being born. I left the apartment and walked 3 blocks before I realized I hadn't locked the door behind me. I didn't go back. That night, Eva wouldn't settle. She screamed for over an hour, her tiny body twisting in my arms. Lena tried to soothe her, pacing the hallway barefoot, humming some lullaby I didn't recognize. I watched them from the kitchen doorway like I was watching actors in a play I couldn't follow anymore. "She's just colicky," Lena said, sweat at her temples, eyes red. "It's normal." I nodded. I was getting good at nodding. "I think we should do a session," she added. "Marriage counseling. Just to stay connected." I stared at her. "Sure," I said, and she smiled. "Anyone in mind?" "No," she said too quickly. "I'll look around." Of course she would. Tom sent me the name of the firm Marcus Wells worked at, Alder Counseling and Trauma Center. I looked up their site. There he was, smiling, clean-shaven, button-down shirt, compassion in his eyes like he practiced it in front of a mirror. Under his name, specializing in relationship repair, attachment trauma, and co-parenting models. There was even a blog post. "When love grows in difficult places." His words. I saved it. Read every line like it was a code. He'd known she was pregnant. He'd seen her during the appointments I thought she was attending alone. Maybe he was even there the day we picked out the crib, waiting for her in that apartment while I struggled with boxed parts and Allen wrenches. I didn't need to know everything. The outline was enough. But then the email arrived. Anonymous sender. No subject line. Just one sentence. She told him you'd never survive on your own. I read it 3 times. It didn't have a signature. The address was a dead end. But someone knew. Someone was watching. Someone had decided I needed to know that. The idea of Lena talking about me that way, soft-voiced, eyes tilted just enough to look like grief, saying I wasn't strong enough to raise Eva alone, made something inside me go still. Not angry. Just cold. Because I was surviving. I was studying her the way she used to study spreadsheets at night, quietly, intensely, without blinking. I didn't need proof anymore. I had purpose. And the thing about purpose is, it doesn't leave room for denial. 3 days later, I followed Marcus. It wasn't hard. I watched him step out of the clinic around 5:40 p.m., briefcase in one hand, phone in the other. His coat was nicer than mine. So were his shoes. He walked with the confidence of a man who believed he was on the right side of things. I didn't confront him. I didn't even get close. Just followed at a distance while he walked to the parking garage, climbed into a silver Audi, and drove toward the east end of town. He stopped at a grocery store, came out with a bag of diapers and formula. Family size. Not mine then. He had his own. And he still made room for Lena. That night, I stood at the foot of our bed while she slept, Eva curled against her chest, tiny fingers pressed to Lena's collarbone. They looked beautiful together, like nothing was broken, but everything was. The next step wouldn't be anger. That was what she'd expect. What he'd expect. Broken men lash out. They yell. They cry. They make mistakes. I wouldn't. I would make sure they never saw me coming. I thought I'd reached the edge of it. That everything I needed to know was already laid bare, the apartment, the messages, the photographs. But betrayal has layers. It doesn't reveal itself all at once. It waits. Sometimes it waits in the quiet. Other times, it introduces itself as a man you've never met, who thinks he knows your daughter better than you do. It was Lena who gave him away again. Not through a mistake, she was too careful for that, but through comfort. She started to relax. Believed I'd let go. Thought the storm had passed, and I decided to bury the silence instead of digging through it. She smiled more. Kissed my cheek without thinking. Let her phone ring beside me and didn't rush to grab it. And in that relaxation, she started slipping. One night, around 2 a.m., I found her in the nursery. Eva was already asleep, her tiny arms in the air like she was dreaming of flight. But Lena wasn't watching her sleep like I expected. She was on the floor, back against the crib, whispering into her phone. I didn't make a sound. Just stood in the hallway, listening to her speak in a voice I hadn't heard before. Soft. Coaxing. A little desperate. I'm trying. I can't just leave. Not yet. Yes, she's perfect. She looks like him, though. I don't know. He hasn't said anything. I think maybe he suspects, but I stepped into the light. Lena froze. Her eyes widened just for a second, a flicker, then she slid the phone behind her and stood up, adjusting her robe. I was checking on her, she said. She's asleep. I know. I just wanted to sit with her for a bit. I nodded. Who were you talking to? She blinked. What? In the dark. On the floor. Who was it? No one. Just my sister. She's been having trouble sleeping too. We've been texting a lot lately. She called. Yes. A pause. She needed to talk. You know how she is. I nodded again, slowly. She didn't offer the phone. Didn't mention the part about Eva looking like him. I said nothing else. Just walked into the nursery and stood by the crib, looking down at the daughter I wasn't sure I'd keep if not for how pure she felt in my arms. Lena lingered in the doorway, waiting. When I didn't turn around, she slipped away down the hall. I gave Tom the go-ahead to dig deeper into Marcus. And what he found was the thread I didn't expect to pull. Marcus Wells. 41. Married. 2 children. House in Ridgefield. No priors. No financial red flags. But 3 years ago, a complaint was filed through the counseling center. A married client, boundaries crossed. Nothing concrete enough to suspend his license, just enough to require supervision. His wife was never notified. The woman who filed the complaint? The name was redacted, but the timeline overlapped exactly with Lena's therapy stint after her miscarriage. The one she didn't want to talk about. The one she said never helped anyway. It started there. They'd known each other for years. This wasn't a spontaneous affair. It wasn't weakness or loneliness or a mistake. It was cultivated, like a garden hidden beneath our marriage. I started printing everything. I built a folder thick with screenshots, receipts, emails, photos, and maps. A paper trail that stitched together Lena's other life like a confession she was too smart to write herself. And then I found the document that split something open in me. A draft of a custody petition, filed but never submitted. Name at the top, Lena Whitmore Wells. Address listed, the apartment above the Pilates studio. Reason for petition, sole custody in the event of separation from biological father due to mental instability and neglectful behavior. Neglectful. Mental instability. I was the one up every night while she disappeared into her phone. I was the one at every OB appointment while she claimed traffic. I was the one who built the crib, painted the walls, read sleep training manuals until I could recite them backward. And she'd planned to take Eva from me. Before she was even born. 2 days later, I scheduled a meeting. With Marcus. I didn't tell Lena. I called the counseling center and booked an intake session under a fake name. Told them I was having anxiety and might be experiencing intrusive thoughts. They squeezed me in for a Tuesday at 3 p.m. When I walked into his office, he didn't recognize me at first. He stood to greet me, Warm handshake, soft therapist voice. Nice to meet you, Ian. Likewise, I said, sitting down. The office was clean, clinical. 2 chairs angled toward each other. A framed photo of a hiking trail. Tissues placed on a table between us, like they were anticipating grief. I let the silence stretch. He crossed one leg over the other, waiting. I wanted to ask you something, I said finally. He nodded. Of course. What's your policy on sleeping with clients? His posture shifted, not a lot, just enough for me to notice. His fingers twitched on his knee. I'm not sure I understand. Lena Whitmore, I said. My wife. His expression went flat. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. You didn't recognize me, but I've seen your face every night for a week. In her photos, her texts, her voice when she thinks I'm asleep. Mr. Whitmore. She kept the apartment spotless. Must have taken her hours to make sure no one saw a trace of you. But she missed a few things. You always do, don't you? He didn't respond. Just watched me. Don't worry, I said, pulling the manila folder from my coat. I'm not here to yell, or punch you, or play the aggrieved husband. I'm not here to hurt you at all. He stared at the folder. I just want you to know, I said, setting it gently on the table between us. I'm not the one who's going to fall apart when this comes out. I stood. Tell her I said hello. And I walked out. When I got home, Lena was feeding Eva. She looked up when I walked in, eyes tired, mouth soft with a smile she hadn't earned. Everything okay? She asked. I kissed her forehead. Perfect, I said. And for the first time, it felt true. By the time she noticed the shift, it was too late. Lena had always been intuitive. She could sense tension in a room the way animals feel storms coming. But she underestimated what silence could mean, how a man who says nothing is sometimes saying everything. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask who Marcus was or when it started. I stopped needing answers the moment I realized I wouldn't believe anything she told me. Instead, I let her talk. I let her lie. It started small. She asked if I wanted to try date nights again, said she missed us, that she wanted to feel like herself again. I agreed. We went out once. Italian place near the park. I watched her push rigatoni around her plate, rambling about Eva's sleep regression and how she might go back to work part-time in the fall. Her smile trembled at the edges, and every time I met her eyes, she looked away too fast. The second time she suggested a night out, I said I was too tired. She didn't press. She thought we were healing, but I was documenting. I went to the apartment again while she thought I was at work. I used the spare key she'd taped under the dog-eared corner of a photo frame in our bedroom, a photo of us at a wedding, laughing in a moment that felt genuine then. I took the key without a sound. This time, I opened every drawer. I took photos of mail addressed to her fake name. Credit card statements showing charges for lingerie I'd never seen. Prescription bottles with someone else's last name, his. And in the bedroom closet, tucked inside a box of old scarves, I found the ultrasound photo. It wasn't Eva. It was older. Dated 6 months before Lena told me she was pregnant. And on the back, in her handwriting, we'll try again. Together this time. Together. They'd lost one before her. A child. And still they kept going. Still they planned. Still they built this second life like it was the one that counted. I left everything exactly as I found it. The only evidence I took was digital. I wasn't there to destroy her, not yet. Just to collect the truth she tried to bury. The next night, I told her we needed to talk. We sat in the living room after Eva had fallen asleep. Lena curled into the corner of the couch, oversized sweater hiding her shape, wine glass untouched on the table. She looked ready to be forgiven. Or pitted. She opened with, I've been feeling lost. I let her speak. She said she didn't know what was wrong. That motherhood was harder than she thought. That maybe she hadn't been honest with herself. That maybe she needed therapy again. But the word again clung too heavily to her mouth, like it betrayed something. I wondered if she knew how often she used past tense verbs for feelings she still lived inside. I want to try, she said, voice low. I want us to be a family. We are, I replied. Just not the one you imagined. She looked up. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her of anything at all. I just left the words sitting there between us like a loaded gun with no fingerprints. She went quiet after that. Kept her distance for a few days. Didn't push. I think she was trying to figure out what I knew. Whether I was bluffing. Whether to come clean or double down. In the end, she did what she always did. She made a plan. It was a Thursday when I found the email. She'd left her laptop open. Probably distracted. Probably assumed I was too passive to notice. The subject line read, finalizing relocation timeline. No mention to Jay, yet. The email itself was brief, forwarded to an account under Marcus's name. She was setting up temporary housing arrangements. Looking into custody agreements. She was going to leave. Not just me, the state. She'd waited just long enough for the postpartum period to pass, for the court to stop seeing her as emotionally compromised. She thought I'd break down. That I'd beg her to stay. That I'd lose in court because I looked unstable. Obsessive. Paranoid. But I wasn't paranoid. I had proof. I called a lawyer the next morning. A quiet man named Dean with tired eyes and a steel-trap memory. I gave him the folder. Let him read it in silence. When he was done, he said, she's going to be the one defending herself. Not you. Then we got to work. Lena didn't see it coming. I filed for full custody. I served her with notice while she was nursing Eva. The knock came at the door, a woman from the courthouse, her expression unreadable. Lena opened it barefoot, baby in one arm, robe hanging loose. She read the letter. Twice. Then looked at me. I don't understand, she whispered. I think you do. You're using her to punish me? I'm protecting her. Lena blinked. Her face twisted, confused, like the mask she wore didn't fit anymore. We can work through this. You filed for custody first, I said. You just didn't hit send. Color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Later that night, she knocked on the bedroom door. I was feeding Eva, bottle balanced in the crook of my arm. Can we talk? She asked, voice small. I didn't answer. Please, she added. I'm with my daughter. Not ours. Mine. I heard her breath catch. Then footsteps. Then silence. Tom sent me a message the next day. Marcus had closed his counseling office. Gone on personal leave. Rumors were circulating professional misconduct. Dean filed a formal complaint on my behalf with the state licensing board. We attached the ultrasound. The emails. The relocation documents. It was enough. But I wasn't doing this for revenge. I wasn't doing it to humiliate her. I was doing it so when Eva got old enough to ask questions, I wouldn't have to lie. I wouldn't have to pretend we were something we weren't. I'd tell her, you were born from silence. But I chose to speak. The woman I married, the one who laughed at my dumb jokes, who danced in the kitchen, who whispered, we're going to be okay. After the first miscarriage, she didn't exist. She was a character Lena played. A version of herself she wore like a dress she knew she'd outgrow. The real Lena was meticulous. Strategic. Empty in ways that no child could fill. And me? I wasn't broken. I wasn't naive. I was awake. Finally. There's a silence that comes after survival. Not peace, exactly. Not relief. Something colder. Emptier. A quiet that lingers even when the noise stops, the kind that moves in and stays. It had been 3 weeks since Lena left the house. She didn't pack a suitcase. Didn't say goodbye to Eva. She just walked out one morning after a court hearing she barely spoke in. The judge had read the evidence, skimmed the depositions, and looked at Lena the way you look at someone you almost feel sorry for, until you remember what they did. She still had visitation rights. Limited. Supervised. She didn't fight it. Not in the courtroom. Not with me. Maybe she thought there'd be time to fix it later. Maybe she knew she couldn't. I kept the house. She didn't want it. Too many memories, she said. Too many things she couldn't explain to herself, let alone a daughter who might one day start asking. Eva was still too young to know any of it. She woke crying. Ate. Slept in cycles. Her world was soft blankets and lullabies and the shape of my arms holding her through 2 a.m. feedings. She didn't miss her mother. Not yet. That grief was still waiting somewhere down the line. But I did what I could to make her world stable, clean, predictable, even if mine wasn't. I thought a lot about Marcus during those nights. I imagined him pacing his house, his real life unraveling in ways that mirrored mine. His name wasn't in any headlines, but his license was under review, his reputation frayed. His wife had filed for separation. I didn't reach out. He didn't try to contact Lena again, or me, but he knew what I'd done. He knew the quiet revenge of a man who didn't raise his voice, just raised the volume on the truth. Lena called once. Blocked number. I picked up by mistake. She didn't say my name, just breathed into the line for a few seconds, then said, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't hang up. You did, I said. You just didn't think I'd notice. There was a pause. Then, do you think she'll hate me? I think she'll forget you. Silence. A rustle of air, then the click of a call ended. She never tried again. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the infidelity or the lies or the second life tucked into linen drawers above a Pilates studio. It was the way Lena held Eva in the beginning, the way she whispered to her like she believed every word, like love could still exist inside a person who planned to vanish. I used to replay those images in my head, trying to make sense of them, trying to find the line between truth and performance. But over time, I stopped needing to. Not because I forgave her, but because I stopped needing the story to make sense. I burned the folder, the photos, the emails, the drafts, the printed screenshots, every trace of Marcus's face, of Lena's secrets, of the apartment I walked through like a ghost. I took it all out to the fire pit one night while Eva slept upstairs, lit a match and watched it go up in silence. Ash drifted into the air, settled on the grass like dust. I didn't feel free. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. Some nights I still wake up before Eva does. Out of habit. I sit in the hallway outside her room, elbows on my knees, listening to her breathe. She makes these little sounds sometimes, even in sleep. Sighs that sound almost like laughter. Her fingers curl into tiny fists. I wonder what she dreams about. I don't pray, but I do make promises. I promise her she'll never know what it's like to be unwanted. I promise her I'll never leave. And I promise myself that when she starts asking questions, I won't lie. But I won't make her carry the weight of it either. Sometimes people ask what happened to Lena. They mean it in different ways. Some mean, is she okay? Others mean, what kind of woman does something like that? I tell them the same thing. She left. That's all I say. Because what I chose not to forget is more important than what I chose not to say. I chose to remember the way Eva looked at me the first time she wrapped her hand around my finger. The way she fell asleep on my chest after her first fever. The way she smiled for the first time while I sang off-key to a lullaby I didn't know the words to. That's what I kept. Not Lena. Not Marcus. Not the wreckage. Just this. Me and Eva. Still here. Still whole. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.